everybody, welcome back to TRB. That's right, it's the Resistance broadcast, and I'm John. Happy to have you here with us on Make Solo 2 Happen Day Eve on this Monday. Approaching the end of May here, but we are very excited about this episode, about tomorrow, and with me as always is Lacey and James. So tomorrow's the day. Make Solo 2 Happen Day continues. Why? One, it was their original plan to keep telling these stories. They had ideas. John Kazan recently tweeted on May the 4th about this whole idea with the Hutt cartel that Han would be working for, the end pages of his first draft of the Solo script with his father, Lawrence Kasdan. But also, everyone involved with the movie, whether it's actors, producers, the head of ILM, Robert Doe, John Kazan himself, Lawrence Kasdan even said he would come back just to do more Solo. They all clearly want to do it. This isn't one of those, hey, you need to change this or do that. It's, you had a plan. Unfortunately, because of what happened with the first movie, it didn't happen. We just want to be able to see that fulfilled, whether that's in a movie, on a Disney Plus series, whatever. We would love to see Alden Ehrenreich and Jonas Sotomo back as Han and Chewie, and of course, all the other characters, right, Lacey? I mean, Makes Solo 2 Happen Day is also just a positive, fun time.
Yeah, we loved it. We just want more. That's it. We wouldn't change anything. We just want the creators to be able to create. Tell
the stories they wanted to tell, right, James?
I think it's one of those things where we would absolutely love to see it, but part of our holiday is just the fact that the movie sort of got its own sort of not very well received whatever, and it's go back, revisit it. Not that your first viewing was incorrect or something like that, but I think there was so much other stuff. We think there was so much other stuff going on in Star Wars at the time that it just didn't really get the fair due for what the movie is and what it's about and how it all plays out. And we just think it's a great movie. So use today to celebrate what you do like about the movies.
Yeah. Share your cosplays.
It's just kind of one of those things. Yeah.
Oh. Yeah. Share all your stuff. We want to see it.
Yeah.
There's no movie that's ever 100% bad. So if there's one thing you like about it, just say, Solo was horrible, but hey, the music was good, or whatever. That's cool.
It comes down to the fact that the movie's clearly picked up steam, and even people who didn't catch it in the theaters first time around have come around to it. People who didn't like it at first said, you know what, actually, that is a pretty good movie now that I've stepped back a bit. And people who originally loved it still love it. And also just the fact, like you guys are saying, it's a positive thing. This is our fourth Make Solo 2 Happen Day, unfortunately. But here we are talking about this. And let's not forget the Clone Wars. There was a movement, Save the Clone Wars, bring back the Clone Wars for 6-7 years. And they finally did that. We're on our fourth Make Solo 2 Happen Day. And Alden Ehrenreich said he would come back and he would actually be more interested in playing this version of Han, who's been a bit jaded. A lot of the other actors want to come back. Obviously, Jonas Sotomo, who's been on the show, we spoke to him last year at Anaheim. He said, keep going. Rob Bordeaux, head of ILM, VP over there, said, we hear you, keep going. This isn't one of those things where they're like, no, you guys are annoying us. They're like, no, keep going because we believe in this. We have stories to tell. And like we said, John Kasdan already has the ideas, and it'd be really cool to see that cartel battle happen on a varying platform. But anyway, it's a good time just celebrating Solo in general. So if you dig the movie, you dig what's going on, and it's always a real positive day, Make Solo 2 Happen Day. So hop on your social media, use the hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen, and that's all you got to do. Tweet away, Instagram away, Facebook away, and let's just have fun sharing our love for this movie. And like Lacey said, whether you have art you made, you have swag, Solo swag, Make Solo 2 Happen shirts, cosplays, whatever, have some fun. And let's celebrate an awesome Star Wars movie and the hopes that we see these characters again in live action. But we are going to talk about Han Solo today, but overall, the character's sort of journey and his arc. So we're going to get to that a bit later. And as you saw with the title, how Luke and Leia helped him rediscover his true self. And honestly, the three of us are obviously going to have varying points of view on that, as we typically do here on TRB, but excited for that discussion later, just to get the flames going in the eve of Make Solo 2 Happen Day as we focus on Han Solo today in our main discussion. But James, before that, we have a segment that we love to do on this show to kick things off. So let's fire that one up.
I fear nothing, for all is as the Force wills it.
That's right. Will of the Force again. Everybody knows that we have, if you're a listener, regular to the show, everybody knows we got the Patreon going on. One of the perks that you get is you occasionally get to, you always get to submit for Will of the Force. But occasionally we do like to do an all patron submitted version of Will of the Force. And we are doing that this week. So if you're a patron, get excited. It's very likely that your question is going to be here. So let's do the first one, kick it off with which comes from Commander Megan Polar.
Hey,
Megan, will Carson Teva be in Ahsoka since he's besties with Zeb? Lacey, kick it off for us. Do you think there's any chance that we're going to see Carson Teva in the Ahsoka series via this connection?
Megan, this is an awesome question, not just because I love Carson Teva and I love Paul, but because I haven't even considered this. I think as Star Wars fans, we often throw out like who's going to be a cameo, who's going to show up. I think this totally makes sense. Yes, 100% he's going to show up at some point. I think it's a very challenging time with Ahsoka and all the different characters that they've said numerous times in interviews are just fighting for like to do what's right, and they're standing up to what's going on. They obviously are going a little bit against the New Republic, which we've seen Carson Teva's character do as well. Like he's one of those righteous people that just wants to keep people safe and stand up for the little guy. So I could totally see him popping up in this show, and I would love it. I hope
John,
Paul's
what do you
just
think?
keeping it to himself.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Especially, they filmed this show in the same place they filmed The Mandalorian. I know Paul's from Canada, but if he's regularly down there for filming The Mandalorian, it would make sense for him to be here. And also, they did seem to set up that all these Adelphi Rangers are this sort of fraternal group who like to, share beverages together, like Norm and the Cheers gang. But this makes a ton of sense to me. Seeing Zeb was so cool, and then seeing him sort of already have this established connection. Like you say, Megan, they're besties with Carson Teva.
It was so well done. It was so well done. His look,
so
everything.
I think the momentum they're trying to build with this Adelphi Rangers thing is going to be part of that movie that Filoni's going to end up doing. So I think it would make sense for more of these characters to continue to overlap into these other stories. I don't think Carson Teva is going to have a big role in Ahsoka, but it would make a ton of sense to have him in there so that we keep the adhesiveness between these shows to remind the audience that this is all part of this bigger story.
I know I've said before that the Mandalorian will show up in Ahsoka, and I think he will, but I could see Carson Teva showing up before the Mandalorian.
Yeah.
And ding, ding, ding. Yes, this is all three of us saying the same thing. Megan, I this is something that I didn't consider until you said it, but when you said it, it just makes perfect sense because you have to have Zeb. Zeb was introduced in The Mandalorian because they were setting you up for Ahsoka. We know that. That's just happening. But the reason they brought him in with Carson Teva, I don't think that's just simply the connection. I think there's more to that because at some point, I feel like you're even going to get to this, like they're going to recruit him. They're going to call him. They're going to ask him, hey, we need your help or something. However, Zeb is involved. I feel like this group of people, I don't know, this just makes so much sense. It's almost, I almost wish you didn't say it because I would have been so surprised, but it's so obvious at the same time. Like, I don't know. It's such a good question, but we're all there.
Yeah, they clearly have an established friendship that I never even really considered. I just thought they were friendly, but looking back in my head at the how he just kind of slides up and he's like, "Hey, how's it going?" You wouldn't do that to just a random person. You do that to a friend,
right?
And he kind of confides in him too.
Lacey, you said he looks so good. I'm telling you, there's one movement. I'm like, I don't even know how they did it. I'm telling you, he puts his hands down and he does this head drop and look over, and I'm like, that is a person. That's not I don't know how they animated it, but he just does. For people on video, he goes
so subtle.
Well, that's June 28th. We're gonna find out on Disney Gallery, The Mandalorian.
I think it's a combo.
Stephen Bloom maybe did some performance capture. That'd be cool.
Very cool. He'd have to be on stilts, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
That
that
would be
wouldn't.
awesome.
I mean, that wouldn't surprise me. I mean, yeah, that's a
They did it for
K2SO and all that too.
Round.
All right, well, let's move on to the next one. Great first question. Moving on to the second, General Christian Morales asked us the question: will any of the upcoming TV series get any tie-in novels? We're looking at upcoming series being Ahsoka, Acolyte, some others. Is there any chance that we're going to get in some books? I'm going to bounce it back at you, John. Any chance we're getting books connected to these TV series?
Acolyte will, for sure. Whether it's comics or a novel, expanding upon, my guess would be the relationship between Amandla Stenberg's character and the dude from Squid Game, so I always forget his name. He plays her master, so I could see, sort of what they did with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, do a bit of a, let's see when they were master and apprentice in a book. That would make a ton of sense to me. The Mandoverse stuff, I don't think so, because books take a while to develop. We know that Adam Christopher had a book tied to the Mandalorian that they ended up canceling. I think they canceled it for a reason, because they were already developing the idea of making this into one big thing. And I think because Filoni's movie is a little bit ways off, you don't want to start tying knots between these different mediums and handcuffing what he's trying to do, what an author's trying to do. And I think they're going to hold off on that. So that's why I look at things like Acolyte, which is not connected to that. And I think Acolyte is prime for getting a book made about it. Like I said, my guess would be the relationship between the Jedi Master and his former Padawan when they were Master and Padawan. So that would be also flirting with High Republic time as well. But I think that'd be a nice lead-in novel, sort of like, what was it, Catalyst? Or novels. What was was that the Rogue One prequel novel? Am I thinking of the name right? I don't know, but something like that. But I think if there are tie-in novels for the Mando stuff, it'll be after Filoni's movie's done and the story's told, just to help supplement the material. But I think it'd be a little messy to try to get that going while he's trying to develop a major motion picture.
Yep. Lacey, what do you think?
I think John's right. The Acolyte's kind of a no-brainer, seeing as one of the characters in it is from the High Republic. It's just kind of like, yes, of course they would have some type of book tied into that. I'm sure even the authors have been working with that group, because even talking about it at Celebration, they were very much intertwined and saying how, they mentioned the High Republic multiple times. You see Jonas's Wookiee character wearing those gold robes, like it's clearly connected there. I also do think that they're going to have some type of book and or comic series related to Skeleton Crew, because it's kids related, and I think it's a perfect way to tie in some kids middle school readers or children's books specifically to these kids going on adventures.
Yeah, I mean, I think as far as the Acolyte goes, you already sort of have the High Republic, tie in there. And I think that as each of these come out, it makes so much sense. But I will say I'm honestly surprised that they haven't done more. Like The Mandalorian had a book and it got canceled.
Yep.
It was around the time of the Gina stuff too, so I don't know if that played a role in it as well.
Yeah, could have. But we still haven't gotten anything from that. But I don't know. It's sort of tricky. Andor sort of has like so much Rogue One stuff. They don't really need it. Obi-Wan, like at this time, I don't know. They're sort of, I don't know. I think Acolyte's probably the likeliest out of all of these, considering they already sort of have a publishing group that's built around that time period. So that is probably what I would say.
I do want to give a quick shout out to Christian. He's our buddy over on our Patreon. As you know, this was a submission from Patreon, but he also is kind of our little leader of the TRB book club that's run through our Patreon as well.
Yeah.
And a group of people get together and they discuss the books, and he is so passionate about it, and it's so lovely to see. So I did want to give him a shout out. And this question is truly him and purely his love for the books. So yeah, it's just another perk of joining Patreon. You get to meet cool people that like stuff just like you, and they have tons of discussions about it.
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, moving on to totally. Moving on to the next one, though. We have a question from one of our Spice runners, Michael Fry, And Michael wanted to ask, will Admiral Sloan or Grand Admiral Rax show up in Ahsoka? In the books, Grand Admiral Rax was the person who created the Shadow Council. I'll kick this one off. I think that there's a chance that they could mention Grand Admiral Rax, but at this time, I don't think that makes a lot of sense. No spoilers. But the question of Admiral Sloan, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. That character has been sort of left untouched. No one's really talked about that character and what they're up to. I think there is a pretty good chance that we could see Sloan and Thrawn working together, Sloan being involved in some way or another, because I know Filoni does pay attention to the books, at least to a certain degree, to keep that content right. So I think so. John, what do you think?
Rax died at the Battle of Jakku. Is that right?
Correct. Yep.
Spoiler.
So, jeez. I mean, it happened a long time ago, right?
Did.
But yeah, so Rax, unless they do flashbacks, I don't know how important that would be. Sloan makes sense. I mean, Pelion was in Mandalorian, so they are paying close attention to these sort of, Thrawn's right-hand man and other people that would be surrounding the military operations and ranks. Ray Sloan would make sense. Let's see, pick up, where that character is at this point in time. So I think so. I think that's a great question, though, Michael. Appreciate it. All these questions have been great. Christian, Megan, Michael, you're gonna put me out of a job.
Lacey, what do you think?
Michael, thank you for your question. Really appreciate it. I agree with these guys. I think they both made really good points. I think Admiral Sloan will show up. She's definitely a fan favorite. People ask all the time about it. And then it would be a really cool cameo and or appearance to have in the show. That would be a total surprise for people. But at the same time, not give too much away. Like if you didn't know who it was, it wouldn't be like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm talking about type thing. But it would be cool for the people that do know. And seeing as they've kind of given you all the different surprises like Thrawn already from Celebration, I think it would just be another kind of fun character for fans to connect everything together. So I'm going to say yes.
And I'm reading now, just real quick, that she sort of rolled with the Huxes. And again, like Hux's dad was a part of that council in Mando. So yeah, it would make a lot of sense.
All right, we got one final question for Will of the Force this week, and this is coming from, again, another one of our patrons, this time Admiral Sooner Thrawn. I wonder if it has anything to do with his question, whether it'll involve Thrawn or Ahsoka or something. We'll see. Will Rey be in the new film more or less than Luke was in The Last Jedi? So it didn't have anything to do with Thrawn, but it has to do with Rey and the new film that she's going to be in coming in 2025, we're assuming. Lacey, what are your thoughts on screen time for the character of Rey?
Wait, hold on. I'm confused by this question. Will Rey be in the new... she'll have more time than Luke in The Last Jedi? Will she be
in the movie more than Luke was in The Last Jedi as the, sort of the father figure to new characters or whatever? Yeah.
100% yes. Sooner Thrawn. Great question. Sorry, I got confused. However, yes, it's Rey's movie. They've made it very clear that this is her story and it's kicking off 15 years later and they brought Daisy out. It's Daisy's story. So I'm going to say yes, 100%.
All right. Yes, 100%. John, do you think the same?
Yeah, I mean, she had 10 minutes more of screen time in The Last Jedi than Luke did. Now you just remove him from the equation, and it's her main story now. It's not still passing the baton. I think this is a complete book it, lock, bang, that Rey will have more screen time in her movie, whatever it's going to be called, than Luke did in TLJ.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think that we don't exactly know what the role of this character is going to be, but I think the question here you're giving us, Soonerthron, is implying potentially that like she's not the main character of these, and she's going to be a mentor that shows up similar to how Luke was a mentor to Rey, and Luke
Mhm.
had about X amount of screen time. You know, I don't know if Luke had more screen time in The Last Jedi than Alec Guinness had screen time in A New Hope. That'd be an interesting comparison as well. But I think that in this case, I'm more assuming that Rey is going to be more of a main character than whoever these other people are. So she's still the main top build person in this movie, which means that she's going to have more screen time than the not top build person in Last Jedi had, which was Mark Hamill. So
Right.
I think that's 3 for 3 on us. We all think that Rey is going to have more screen time than Luke did.
So real
in
quick,
that movie.
James. Obi-Wan 17 plus minutes in A New Hope. Luke Skywalker 23 plus minutes in TLJ.
So only 6 minutes more, but also, well, okay. I was about to say Obi-Wan did die in that movie, but Luke
did die
too, so
So did Luke.
it doesn't really
Yeah.
mean. But Luke died at the very end. All right, so that's going to be it this week for Will of the Force, and I'm going to send it over to Lacey as she introduces our next section.
All right, guys, it's time for the Patreon pod race. All right, guys, there are lots of ways you can support us. You can like this video, comment, subscribe on YouTube. We really appreciate it. We just went over 2,000 subscribers, which is awesome. You can share this episode on social media, whether it be on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what your favorite part is, because that also lets other people know that we exist. And the best way to tell other people about a podcast is word of mouth. So if you're also on an audio platform like an Apple Podcast or a Spotify, leave us a review if you have the time. It lets us know how we're doing, and then also lets other people know what you like about the podcast. But if you want more than that, you can head over to patreon.com/resistance broadcast, and you become a part of the community and what we're doing here, and you play a part in what our dreams and goals are with the podcast and where we go from here. So starting at just $5 a month, you're saying, hey, I want to join the resistance, and we truly, truly appreciate it. So this is the part of the show that we let our generals and spice runners take part. We ask them a question, they give us their answer, we discuss a little bit. But before we get to that, I do want to thank those people. So first, thank you to our generals: Carmelo, John Risi, Jetta Rosewater, Frank Grande, Darth Hurricane, Nick Kratz, Christian Morales, Brian Smith, Matt Chitty, Danny, Mike Ramori, Matt Heath, Brendan McLaughlin, Count Pepto, Sneaky Zebra, Aaron Ellington, Micah Harrison, Colin Coromer, Hass Islam, Jolton Jedi DiMaggio, and Diana. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall Gelner, Dave Hornack, Thomas Hennessy, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, and Michael Fry. Thank you guys so much. We're going to have a Spice Runner coming up soon with the Spice Run chat on Patreon. Can't wait for that. But this week, we have one of our awesome generals. It is John Risi. What up, John? Awesome to have you on the show.
General Beard.
Yep. And his question is, what is the best Star Wars movie title in your opinion, and why? John, take it away.
Good evening, TRB. General Beard here. I had a little bit of a difficult time thinking of this, and I'm going to have to go with Revenge of the Sith being the best Star Wars movie title we've had so far. The prequel trilogy isn't my favorite overall trilogy, although I do still love it. But Revenge of the Sith, from being an evocative and grabbing title that gets you on the name alone, it carries a whole lot of weight, especially if you've grown up with the original trilogy and getting the end of Vader's backstory as Anakin, at least at the time that we had. Obviously, we're getting more content filled in. But yeah, I gotta say, Revenge of the Sith, it's striking. It's telling you that something bad is going to happen, and it is the best of the prequel trilogy for me, personally. So there we go. Revenge of the Sith as the best Star Wars movie title. General Beard, out.
Awesome job, John. It's so great to have you on the show again and to just see your face. It's so wonderful. So, James, what did you think?
Well, that's half the problem, Lacey. You can't see his face. It's half of it's covered in a beard. No, John,
But
I
it's
think
so
that's a
majestic.
great answer. Yeah. I think it's a great answer. The Revenge of the Sith. I think there's a fun story with that one too when it comes down to the Revenge of the Jedi, and then it was Return of the Jedi, but then when they did the prequels and all that, it's just it's such a cool title that I think that might be my choice too. I'd have to think about it a little bit. But I also wanted to mention, have you guys ever seen that video where they said like all the Star Wars movies have the wrong title?
Yes. And it's very
It's
funny.
so good. I'm like, look, I'm fine with the titles being what they are or whatever, but the way it just happens to play out, and I'm like, all of those make so much sense. So if you haven't seen that, go check it out. It's a cool little thing. But John, I think you nailed it. And with the prequel trilogy being your favorite overall trilogy, like, or you're not your favorite, but still going to that. Yeah, I don't know. I think that's a good choice. And thanks for doing the pod race.
John, what'd you think?
Yeah, I mean it's tough to pick one, so that's why I was very interested to see where you went. Especially, you even said it here. The prequel trilogy is not your favorite, but I think Attack of the Clones is the only title I don't love because they didn't really attack. But it's a good pick. Revenge of the Sith is dark, it's sinister, it's provocative, and like James said, it's a nod to the original title of Return of the Jedi, but also serves as a nice parallel to Return of the Jedi now too, as the third in that trilogy versus the third in the original trilogy. So I'm glad you had fun with it. I know you were talking in Discord how you enjoyed it. I also like that a lot of people were guessing that it would be Solo because tomorrow makes Solo 2 happen day and stuff like that, but they were wrong. You went with Revenge of the Sith, and I can't argue with that. Good job, man. And thanks.
Awesome. John, it's so great to have you on the show. And you're just one of those people that I know is going to give like the best answers. I feel like the last one you did had to do with like designing some type of space, right? And you're an architect, so you brought this like crazy knowledge to the question. But I really liked your answer. I think Revenge of the Sith is a really, really powerful title. It's not my favorite movie, but it does have a good title. That being said, thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. And now I'm going to head to John for our discussion.
All right, this week's discussion, how Luke and Leia might have, I think, helped Han Solo rediscover his true self.
Obi-Wan once thought as you do.
Here we go, folks. Han Solo carries a lot of reputations, varying, depending on who in the Star Wars galaxy you talk to. Han has one of the most fleshed out stories in all of Star Wars, ranging from his teens into old age. And along that journey, he went through a lot of personality changes. But let's talk about the impact that Luke and Leia had on Han, and the idea that the two of them might have helped him rediscover his true self beyond the guarded, impenetrable exterior he showcased when we first met him in the original Star Wars film. Now, this idea comes from me. I don't know that Lacey and James agree with this. So I'm just going to start by saying what I've always believed was the purpose of the movie Solo and what that tells us about who Han becomes later on. And that when we first meet Han, he is more of a anything's possible optimist. Like, I will be able to do this. He believes in love. He believes in friendship. He believes in mentors. He has all of those things. And then by the end of the movie, he loses all of them through betrayal. Kira, clearly with the betrayal with Crimson Dawn. Lando takes off and leaves him high and dry and, swindled him a couple times. And, of course, Beckett and that betrayal and how that ended and what that did to Han and learning to maybe you do have to shoot first sometimes. And then we meet Han, and we've heard in interviews with John Kasdan, Lawrence Kasdan, and of course Alden Ehrenreich saying the plan was to get him to become the Han we meet in A New Hope, and then he would have played that version of him in stuff after Solo, in between Solo, in the 10 years between Solo and A New Hope. So then we meet him in A New Hope, and he's this guy who's the first thing he literally says is his own name, Han Solo. All he cares about is the rewards, the money, himself, getting out of there. I got to take care of my business. What good's a reward if you're not around to use it? He's a very hard. You're not going to get inside to him emotionally. He's going to keep you at a distance. The only person he cares about, two things he cares about: his ship and Chewie, and that's it.
And money.
And who?
And money.
And money, right? But because Chewie never turned his back on him, he's always been his loyal, Indiana, so to speak, as George Lucas had with his dog. But what I'm trying to get to is we see that return back to this Han we met at the beginning of Solo, where he does find love again through Leia. He finds trust again, and he is willing to do everything he possibly can to help his friends, including what he thought might have been his own death in the carbon chamber. He wouldn't give his friends up. He cared about Luke off the bat, even just seeing him caring about him in the garbage compactor when Luke disappeared by the Dianoga. Those two, I feel, really got to Han, and they were the first to do it in that 10-year gap after what happened in Solo. And then you sort of connect the dots, seeing the Han in Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, especially when that rounds out. And you can really connect that Han with the Han at the beginning of Solo. So I truly believe in my heart that out of all the things and accolades and amazing things that Luke and Leia have done for the galaxy, for the Force, for everything, I think one big thing that they did that a lot of people don't talk about is they helped Han rediscover his true self and break down those barriers that he put up due to what had happened to him and his traumas from being betrayed in Solo. So I'm starting it there. That's my thought, my belief. I don't know which of you want to take the baton, so to speak, and continue this, but whether you agree or disagree with me, but go ahead.
Go ahead, James.
I think you're right. I think that if you're even just looking at a surface level of what is the story of A New Hope, and Han's character arc through that, you go, well, he started here and he ends here. So what was the difference there? And I think that when you're looking at this Luke and Leia, I actually think it's less Leia, and I don't want to say that she didn't help at all, but I think it's mostly Luke. Because I think throughout this movie, Han liked Leia, was interested in Leia or whatever, but I think he still sort of saw her as like a princess, a woman, someone that he may or not be able to get, but if he doesn't get, it's not the end of the world. I think the person that really changed him is all the time that he spent with Luke, and Luke's, we can't just leave. We've got to help them and all that stuff, that led him to believe that there may be another Chewie out there. He has this strong, loyal friend, and he doesn't trust anybody but Chewie. But I think in meeting Luke and learning about him and sort of, in a way, becoming his friend, he truly believed that Luke was someone who was not dishonest, who wanted to do the right thing and was in it for all of the right reasons, and didn't have any ulterior motives. And I think when he left with all the reward money, I think he's like, I'm leaving that kid high and dry. It's not the rebellion so much. I think he really felt for Luke and felt like he found another friend that could be another part of his family. I think he turned around for Luke.
I think that I think definitely it's a little more Luke. I agree with you, James. I think they both had an impact, but I think Luke definitely kicked off, I think, that. And funny that we're about to do Make Solo 2 Happen Day, but I think what Solo does so beautifully with Han's character is you get the explanations of why he does the things he does in the original trilogy. So when you see the guy you meet at the beginning of A New Hope, and when he meets Luke, Luke is basically Han Solo and Solo's Star Wars story. We've got ourselves a pilot. We don't need anybody else. Like, I can do this. We need to help people.
Right.
We need to do the right thing. We need to, that is Han in a Solo Star Wars story. Like, to the point that he's convincing Dryden Voss to do this thing. He's doing, he's chasing after the girl like Han was chasing after Kira. And I can't help but think that when the Kasdans were writing that, they were reflecting that character development and those kind of the relationship between Luke and Han in young Han, because his just go get attitude, where he cuts the cables so that, Beckett and Chewie don't die, even though the money's on the line. He said that doesn't matter. What matters is that you guys are safe, right? Then at the end of A New Hope, when he takes off with the money and leaves the rebellion, he's basically being Beckett. He's taking the money and running and leaving everybody behind. He goes, I'm not that guy, because he's the good guy. He's the one that has the heart, like Kira said. I think that every time you have these instances where he decides to do the right thing, it's because he's realizing that he was once Luke and he knows what that's like. And ultimately, he is that person. And he's been fighting it for so long that it feels good to give in to that good behavior. That being said, there are elements, obviously, for him to get money and be like, oh, it's a princess, she's got a lot of money. But then with Leia, you can't help but see a comparison there, especially in Empire Strikes Back, where at the end, he's looking at her longingly, just like he looked at Kira when she left without him. Except he's looking at someone that's not leaving behind. He's leaving her this time. And there's that connection that they have in Solo's Star Wars story where he's being left on land. That's why he's telling Chewie, hey, take care of her, because he doesn't know if he's going to get out of it. And he knows that out of anybody in this world, Chewie's going to do the right thing and take care of her. And I just feel like Leia is someone that pushed his buttons. And obviously that they had that like, will they, won't they, challenging relationship. But they also challenged each other to be better. So like you said, James, I think they both had an impact, but I think Luke is the one that kind of kickstarted that impact.
Yeah, based on your answer, let me ask you guys this. When did Han, in your opinion, become his true self again? Because to me, I'm equating that to he was back when he turned the ship around and saved Luke at the Death Star trench run. But I think, given your answer and potentially what John was saying too, because we're looking at the original trilogy and Leia's impact on Han, which really didn't start probably until about Empire Strikes Back, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Did he become his true self by Return of the Jedi? So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Because I was saying A New Hope, so I wasn't really considering Empire and Return of the Jedi in that.
Empire is Han's movie, and that's where his arc is realized, even to the point where Kasdan and Harrison Ford were trying to convince George Lucas to kill him off because they felt like his character had seen his arc through to completion, which is, in my opinion, rediscovering, who this kid was on Corellia, this, optimistic kid who believed in true love. And because Han was a hopeless romantic, I'm going to go get a ship. I'm going to go back to Corellia. I'm going to get her. He's like Jack Dawson in Titanic, pretty much. And you look at him in A New Hope, and he's just like the exact opposite. He almost feels like he's a player. He doesn't want to deal with this attitude.
It feels like he's lying now that we know him so well.
Well, that's
Fronting,
where the whole, if you've ever been broken up with or, hurt or whatever by somebody, you're going to develop all this scar tissue, and it's going to change how you're going to be jaded in how you look at romance and stuff. And you're going to be
put up a wall. Yeah.
And I think it took, if you watch like the beginning and first half of Empire, let's not forget, Han doesn't call Leia until halfway through The Empire Strikes Back. And it's literally a minute before they kiss for the first time. The rest, it's sweetheart, your worshipfulness, all these little derogatory digs.
A lot of Harrison finger pointing.
Will you stop calling me that? And he says, sure, Leia. And then she heard that, and she's realizing that he's finally starting to warm up to her for real. And I think what we were seeing in A New Hope and Empire is, Leia's a very strong personality, and she's challenging him. But that's also Han trying to test to make sure that she actually does like him because of what happened, what Kira did to him. He thought she was the love of his life. He was going to do everything possible to go back to a very dangerous situation where he was literally an imprisoned orphan to free her. And no matter what it took, he was on his own. Him and Chewie could have just went off and did their thing. He's like, no, Kira.
He went to
I'm going
Kessel
back
for
to
her.
Kira.
Yeah, he did all these things. Yeah.
So to think that he gets hurt so badly by her, and at the end of Solo, when you see him watching her fly off, that's one of the most like deep, like dramatic moments in Star Wars for me, because you see him just watching the love of his life rip his heart out of his chest.
Choose her and not him.
Yeah, Chewie puts his arm on him like, hey man, I'm for you. I'm here for you. So then you take all that, because we've all gone through breakups and hurt and that heartbreak and all that. And he carries that with him forward. Now, who knows what happens in the 10 years between that, but you have to assume he never had another love until Leia comes into his life. And he's going to do everything he can to put that guard up until she convinces him that it's real and she does love him. So I think that whole thing about the I love you, I know thing is funny, because it's almost like Han wasn't ready to say it yet, but hearing Leia say it like gave him everything he possibly needed to know that he was doing the right thing. So then when he's going down and you see Han sort of being dropped down into the chamber right before the freeze comes over him, he gives her this sort of like puppy dog look, like, I want to say it, but I can't yet, but I know.
It's literally the look in Solo. No joke. It's the same look. And then Chewie has his arm around Leia instead of his arm around Han.
Yeah. And to me, it's both of them. It's Luke and Leia, because like you said, James, I think you're absolutely right. I think A New Hope is Luke getting to Han in terms of like restoring believing in friendship and believing in, doing something to help your friends. And Empire is where he learned to love again. And then that all totally culminates in Return of the Jedi, of course. But I really also love the parallels Lacey brought up about Han seeing himself in Luke. And because they were the same age, Han was 21 in Solo and Luke's 19 in A New Hope. And you do kind of see in that cool scene where they're in the cockpit and they're both sort of like seeing where they each stand about how they feel about Leia. And Han just goes, I got too much going on to worry about that kid. And Luke goes, good. And then Han looks at him and he's like, you know what? I'm going to bust this kid's chops. He's like, still, she's got a lot of spirit. I don't know. What do you think? A girl like her and a guy like me? And Luke's like, no. And then Han does this laugh like, I've been there before. So it's almost like Han is seeing his unjaded life through Luke's eyes, and that optimist, like you said, James, we can't stop now. We got to go back and save her. Mm-hmm. It's sort of like Han in a weird way, even though Luke's the kid in the situation, he's looking up to Luke because he sees what he feels like he always used to be. And he's like, there's something wrong with me that I don't align with him anymore. And
Han's been hanging out with people that have been bad. He's been in the wrong crowd for so long that it isn't until he meets Luke that he like immediately meets him and he's like, this is just some kid, it's stupid, blah, 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 blah. But I like throughout that A New Hope movie, I think he's like, I think that kid's serious. I think that kid really is like gonna do what he says. He's not trying to trick anybody. He's not trying to fool anybody. He goes, I wonder like if I should be like that, or I wonder maybe I'm in the wrong crowd or something like that. But I also want to say, John, I think you nailed it 100%. Like you convinced me on what the Empire Strikes Back is, because as you were going through it, you got to the point, but I was already there ahead of you. I was like waiting to be like, yes. There's two parts to Han.
Yeah.
Luke saves the first part in A New Hope, and Leia saves the second part. Finally allows somebody into his close romantic inner circle that he's been afraid to let go. So yes, I think that's like 50% of him was saved. And I just think of that as like, oh, Han's back, because when Empire Strikes Back, like he's not being the same Han anymore when you look at like his commitment to the rebellion and stuff. He's he's on Echo Base. He's willing to do this for his friends. He's obviously involved in all that. But I you're right. I didn't really think of the romantic side of like his allowing people in that regard, and Leia had to break that for him.
And don't forget, like, I'm not sure the map of the Falcon, but I'm pretty sure the spot where Han and Leia kiss for the first time is not too far from where Kira and Han kiss in the Falcon in Solo. But the difference is that scene in the cape closet in Solo is like the last kiss, the dying love. And the scene in Empire is the first kiss. It's new love. It's the start of their love. But then you have Han, like throughout Solo, it's something a lot of people don't either pay attention to or talk about. Kira keeps trying to like tell Han, like, things are not good. I can't go back to this. You're not paying attention. And he's just like, I love you. I love you. I love you. I'm not listening. I love you. I love you.
His
We're going to be
blinders
together
on.
forever. Yeah. And then the flip side in Empire, Han is paying attention very closely to everything Leia's doing because he likes her and he wants to make sure that she's real and this is real. So everything she says, he picks up on and he tests her by pushing her buttons to see if she won't go away. It's a classic like abandonment thing. Like, let me see how far I could push her and she'll stay around. And because Kasdan wrote the final, drafts for Empire, and I'm talking about Lawrence Kasdan. John Kasdan, of course, co-wrote Solo, and Lawrence Kasdan also wrote Solo. That's not by accident. Like, if you really look at the story of Han and Solo and compare it to the journey that Han goes through in A New Hope, but especially Empire, from Kasdan's pen's point of view, there's so many like when a photo's a negative, like you flip it and you're seeing Han from two different points of view. And it's just so interesting how you can match those points as to things that happen to him in Solo are why he's doing things this way in Empire. And it's so incredible to look at. And it just that's what makes me love Solo that much more, because it helps me understand why Han is the way he is in the original trilogy. So while people talk about, oh, Solo just checked boxes and stuff, I'm like, you need to watch that movie again and pay more attention, because that movie's a lot deeper in terms of the journey of that character than a lot of other stories that have been told about younger versions of characters that I won't get into in Star Wars.
Yeah, Solo is a love letter to Han Solo.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Maybe you need to repeat it so I understand what you're saying, because when Lacey said that he's got his blinders on, he just is like, telling Kira this is the way that it is, and she's trying to say, no, that's not it, like, we're not in this relationship, that's not going to happen. That sort of feels to me like where Han was at the beginning of Empire Strikes Back. Like, he's the one saying, the real reason is you don't want me to leave because of the way you feel about me. And she's right, clearly being like, it's not romantic, Han. Listen to what I'm saying. That's not the case. That's not. And he's like, but it is. I know that it is.
That's him testing how she feels.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess. Yeah, it's like he wants her to get to that point because he really does want her to be the person that saves him, or he wants somebody to save him, and he thinks it could be Leia. As long as she would just, I guess, commit and be honest.
I think it's more of like a testing, like, hey, I'm getting a vibe and I'm going to press these buttons to see what that vibe is returning to me. I don't know if it's like he's looking for her to save him. I think she did save him in a sense, but I don't think he's looking for that. I think he's just being like his kind of jerk self. Like when guys are mean just to get your attention and rude to get your attention, but they're not trying to hurt your feelings. They're just testing boundaries.
Right. But I think the only guys who would like really do that probably have had issues in relationships before that.
Sure. So you're saying it's more of a lack of confidence or a lack of self-esteem.
I'm sort of saying, like, I think Han in Solo, A Star Wars Story, was extremely confident, and he wanted Kira, and he
because that's what he remembered.
What Kira was saying, right?
He remembered the good times.
Yeah. He wanted to go back to that or whatever, and he was just severely optimistic in that point. But I'm saying that carries over to me, even in A New Hope or in Empire Strikes Back, because he's not very trustworthy. He's not letting people in to that regard, but I think he'd be willing to let people in as long as he could get that person to actually commit and be like, no, I actually do love you.
I guess I'm not kind of not following what you're saying, because the way I took Han Solo in Empire Strikes Back, especially in the beginning of the movie, is that he very much is testing boundaries. He's insecure in the sense of like what her true feelings are, and with the exception of Luke, which we've established, he sees himself in Luke. He has a connection with Luke. They're friends. He cares about Luke. Luke is the real reason he came back in A New Hope. It's not Leia. In the beginning of Empire Strikes Back, he goes to save Luke and then basically is like, bye, Leia. See you later. I have no interest here. But at the same time, he's poking to see what the interest is. I don't take it as him knowing she loves him. I think he's just poking fun to like see what the vibe is.
Yeah. And as the movie goes on and the stakes,
It's kind of interesting.
And the stakes,
I'd like to explore that. Not necessarily right now, but like I'm just kind of interested to get down to where he maybe was as far as like his actual understanding of her love and if he was in the same boat.
I think he was poking fun at first and giving her a hard time like he did in A New Hope, but in a, like more of a flirty way. And then over time, until they were in that like kind of side room, he didn't realize it was actually being reciprocated until he made his move.
Yeah, there's that big moment where I think any guy who has ever tried to see if a girl liked him, he says, or she says, "We need your help," and he goes, "We need. What about you need?" And she goes, "I don't know what you're talking about." And he's like, "Ah." So he walks off, and he sees if she follows him. And the moment she followed him to continue the conversation, he's like, "She does like me."
Hooked.
So before they leave Hoth, he knows that she cares about him. But until that moment on the Falcon where they kiss and he says her name for the first time, which still blows my mind that it's that far. It's halfway through the original trilogy and Han doesn't say Leia once until that point.
Mm-hmm.
That they kiss is when it's like, it's the real deal. Because then at that point they start holding hands. He tells Lando, like, piss off, like, this is my girl, you know? And then, of course, it culminates with the tragic ending of the movie where, you know, the audience and Leia and Chewie and everybody think Han might be dead. And whether, even though he's in perfect hibernation, there's still no guarantee he's going to get out of there.
I still find it wild that like people saw that movie and then had to wait for the third one, whereas we obviously didn't, where everyone was like, is Han dead? And for years, they didn't know if Han was alive.
And I wonder if, on a side note, I would love to look at the archives on interviews, just casual interviews of, you know, Harrison Ford in like 1981 when he's promoting Indiana Jones and or Raiders of the Lost Ark, of course. And people ask him about Star Wars, and he's probably like, "Nah, my character died in the last one." Or, he probably had so much fun messing with people about that. Because at that point, I don't even know that I don't know that he was under contract for 3 movies, and you know how flippant he is about that sort of thing. So if I had to guess, I'm sure he had a lot of fun. Yeah, I'm sure he had a lot of fun answering those questions.
I think, I think it's one of those things like when I'm hearing you guys talk about how you are understanding Han in that situation, I think maybe I am just sort of projecting my own personality on like what I would do in a situation like that, because I know personally I would never tell a girl, like assuming I'm not married, I'm single or whatever. I would never tell a girl, you like me, you're into me, you know, kind of thing.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton.
If I didn't have any interest in that girl, to do something like that, just to see if that girl would answer with like, well, kind of, or maybe, you know, or something like that. Just
every girl,
that'd be the thing that sparks it.
Every girl's answering with shut up, no, I don't. Every girl's answering with shut up, no, I don't. There's no way some girl's going, yes, I do. They're saying no. They're playing hard to get.
Right. So in what I would think would be the case is more along the lines of like, I'm getting a vibe that this girl might actually like me. So I'm going to be confident about it, but I'm going to try to see if I can get her to admit that.
Well,
because I'm already getting that vibe. I'm not just testing her. I'm already getting something.
But let's not get hung up on what we would do, because we're not Han Solo.
Well, I'm trying to understand, like, I thought it was what I would do, and I think you guys are perceiving it as like, no, this character would do that. And I'm
Think
like,
about
oh,
Yeah.
would he though? You know,
think
I'm
about
like,
Han
that's not how I would.
sitting in first light saying, "We've got the pilot." That's literally what he does to Leia is, "You care about me. You want me here." And she's going, "What? No." And he's just like, "You do.
Han takes
I'm
big
the guy."
Yeah, he takes big swings, and he often talks first and then figures stuff out later, and he even says
Like
that
pushing the cape,
in the
dropping the cape, same thing.
yeah, like even in Force Awakens when he goes, I don't ask myself that question until I've already done it. It's just like he's just a very he is a rogue,
I've got an answer, but you're
reckless-
not going to like it. Yeah.
Yeah, he's just like shoot first, ask questions later, like talk first and I'll figure it out later. Like I just need to get past this moment right now. And I think that goes in all aspects of his life. But to go back to the other element of Solo and the mentor element that we haven't touched on yet is the Beckett part. And I think where that plays in for the future of Han is just like at any point when you're a kid growing up and you know your dad tells you have to go to bed and you can't stay up with the adults and like all that stuff, I can't wait till I'm grown up. And it's like the movie Big. He's like, I can't wait till I'm big and I can be the adult, I can be in charge and stuff. Han finally gets to be the adult, and then he sees, Luke, and he's sort of Luke's mentor in a way. And I feel like he takes on some of the stuff that Beckett passed on to him for sure. And you can see tons of parallels in A New Hope.
Oh, I said that earlier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like taking the money.
Mhm.
Yeah.
There's a billion like clear parallels. And the reason why the character Beckett exists is to show us that, because you always, even though the way it ended between him and Beckett, you can tell he still loved him even after he shot him. He's like, I was really going to play that Valor chord. He's like, I know. And he's easing his body down. Is a very dramatic and deeply emotional moment between those two. So he definitely still, I think, admired Beckett, even though Beckett betrayed him. And he carried a lot of those traits on with him. And we see that play out with Luke. But then Luke did something to him, again, like we said, to round all this out, to make him almost want to, it almost felt like Han wished he was still that way, and he was almost envious of Luke's optimism, but it also did something to him. And that's why, James, to your point, he comes back at the end because, and Lacey, like you said, he is the good guy. He ultimately he's not gonna go see about a job or go betray that kid. He's gonna go back and help him. And you're right, James, it was for that kid, being Luke. Like he didn't know that Obi-Wan was in his ear helping him. He's just like, that kid's by himself in this ship. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Him saving himself, honestly. He's going back to save his younger self.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a deep way to look at it. And what's cool about it, though, is George Lucas obviously never wrote it that way. So it was retroactively written that way by Kasdan, who I think understands Han and gave us a developed version of Han that George Lucas probably never would have dreamed of. I know, George Lucas created the character of Han Solo and all that. And I love how he's written in A New Hope. I also love where they took that character, because if they didn't if they just kept Han being the way Han was, it would have been a flat character and it would have been terrible. I like the journey they put him on and made the focus, part of the focus on Empire, about his arc and him becoming a compassionate, empathetic, selfless person who's the exact opposite of who he was in A New Hope. And then they were able to retrofit that with the story in Solo. Like, I don't think Solo exists if Han Solo is this one-dimensional, just playboy character. And we've seen Star Wars try to make new Han Solos all the time. Poe Dameron is certainly cut from the same type of cloth. He's, you fly boy, you're reckless, and all that stuff. We've seen that. Even Leia slaps him in the face.
I think they tried hard to make him Han in The Last Jedi, and I think it kind of, I don't know, for his character, I was like, he was doing the right thing in TFA already.
Yeah.
Like he was already going to the, the place to get the plans to help Leia. Like he wouldn't be the person that would fight every step of the way, I guess.
It's hard to create these new Han Solo type of versions because of, one, the performance Harrison Ford gives, of course, but also the layers in which they wrote the character, and that you really see a person develop. And, I'm not the same person I was when I was 21. and that should be the same for fictional characters. And it's, Luke Skywalker is the hero of the original trilogy, but Han is right there with him, and I like Luke's journey to becoming a Jedi in the original trilogy, but I'm more interested in Han's journey as a character than Luke's. I think it's deeper. I think it's more relatable. I think it's more human.
I think everybody likes the story of the guy that is kind of scumbag, who is really the guy with the heart of gold. I mean, you can find so many fan favorite characters
100%.
like that. Jack Sparrow is one. He shows up and he's a selfish pirate, doesn't care about anybody else. He spends the whole movie helping everybody else.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I mean, which also is to go back to Poe really
The
quick
bad
too.
boy.
I mean, I think that's what they're trying to do with that character is they even when they got to the point where they were like, maybe this guy is too good or something, like he's even though he's like throwing mutinies around, we haven't quite gotten it yet, so they need to develop even more. They're like, no, he used to be really bad, he used to be a spice runner and all this, it's like they're really trying to make him this character.
I think it was too hard. They went too hard into the Han Solo.
Potentially. It's funny that I totally agree that he is a Han Solo type, but to me, like if you put the characters 1-to-1, I think of Rey as Luke, and I think of Poe as Leia, and I think of Finn as more of the Han Solo character. But what's interesting about that is that his personality type is like a Han Solo, which is probably why he connects with Leia. And Leia's like, I see what I like about him is what I liked about Han. He's got this particular attitude to him, but he is supposed to sort of be the like rebellion.
Yeah, and not to make
character.
I mean, Poe's not the focus here, but let's not also forget
absolutely not. Yeah, sorry.
Poe was originally going to die early, and then they kept him around. And who co-wrote The Force Awakens?
Kasdan.
Lawrence Kasdan.
Not sure. Never looked into it.
So it's all there. He probably said like, let's pepper a little bit of this in here, even though we have Han Solo himself in the movie. I guess one other thing I wanted to touch on is, the orphan element, because Han was an orphan, didn't even have a surname. People joke about how he got the name, and I get that. That's fine. Whatever. I like that he had to make that name for himself. It wasn't something that was passed on to him. It was given to him by someone who didn't give a crap about him. He's just like, I'm going to give you something so that we can ID you. And he made a legacy out of that name. And then all through the galaxy, when people heard the name Solo, they were either really annoyed about it or they were glad he was on their side. Solo became a name, and that carried on. So I like that element of it. But it also goes into the thing with Luke. Like when we meet Luke,
Lord, man,
and
You're right.
Well, there's another archetype. But Luke again, also like Han, orphaned. He had his aunt and uncle; they die. So Han seeing this kid who has no family, and he's probably wondering like, why is this kid doing this?
I don't think he knows he has no family at this point, though.
Well, he might not know, but I assume he just sees him with this old wizard, and he's like, "Why is this kid with this guy? Where's his family?" He probably felt a little bit like how he felt on Corellia, I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But that whole wonderment of why is this kid doing it, and the only reason why Luke's doing it is because it's the right thing to do. And
I mean,
Luke,
Andy has nothing left for him.
Yeah, and he, I think, like Luke, like Mark Hamill said, like he believes that Luke is just genuinely believes in good, and I really do think we're right in that, and I hope our audience agrees that A New Hope is what opened Han back up to believing in friendship and believing that you don't have to just worry about yourself, you can worry about others. And then Empire is where he found love again. People can say what they want about Han in Return of the Jedi. I mean, I felt like he was a little goofy in Return of the Jedi.
I loved him in Return of the Jedi.
I do too, trust me. But he didn't like you. It didn't really add like if you
the
look at
Jabba
Return of the
Palace
Jedi,
scene is pure Han Solo.
Yes, but I'm saying like Return of the Jedi. What does it add to the character arc of Han Solo? Probably not much. But he's still there.
Fully invested. He's fully
exactly. Yeah, his arc was fully realized, and he's still there. And I'm glad he was there, and he did a lot of great things for the story. But in terms of his character development,
and his jokiness is because he's able to let down his full guard because he's
exactly. Yeah, he's back to like how he was at the beginning of Solo, where he was very funny and jokey and having fun, and
Where he's
hopeful.
tricking
And,
stormtroopers to think that Chewbacca's eating him, stuff like
yeah,
that.
and even the optimism, like when they're in Shuttle Tydirium, he's like, "It'll work. Don't worry, it'll work." And he's like, "I don't know,
You know,
Chewie,
it's
it might not
interesting.
work."
There's no dialogue of this, but it is kind of interesting. Is like one of the big story elements of of Return of the Jedi is that even though Han has this bad history and debts and all these issues, his friends are still there for him. He doesn't actually have a line in the movie where he says like, "Hey guys, that was my problem, and I really appreciate you guys coming and saving me." That could have been an arc that we'll just have to write in our heads as like him also realizing that moving past his previous lifestyle is something that the people that he's chosen as friends are with him on that and helping him get through what the decisions and choices that he's made in the past.
In Jedi, you mean? Like when they saved him?
Yeah, I'm trying.
I kind of
trying
like
on the
though
Return of the
his
Jedi.
very like he's definitely nonchalant. Like you can tell that it matters to him, but at the same time, he has that Han Solo reaction, being like, "Oh, Luke's a Jedi, great. Everyone's got delusions of grandeur." And he's like, "Oh, I'm from this planet. There's nothing." He's like, "Oh, great." Like he just has this attitude, and obviously, when stuff gets to the point that he needs to step into action and save Lando and do all, he does it. But I
Right.
like how he's still coming out of Carbonite, even Leia being there, and they have a moment together. He still defaults into that sarcastic because I think that's his defense, is to go into the sarcasm and be like, "Yeah, whatever. This is stupid."
And he's at the absolute lowest of lows, and he's like, "You're throwing out a fortune."
Yeah, but
pulling him away.
When it's all said and done, though, and they go their separate ways, and Luke goes back to Dagobah, Han does say, "Hey, Luke, thanks for coming back for me.
Mhm.
Now I owe you one." Yeah, he does thank him.
Wait, when is
Mhm.
that?
When he goes to
So
Dagobah.
the Falcon's flying to the rebellion, and Luke's flying to Dagobah.
He says it over the radio.
over their comms. He says, "Hey, Luke, thanks for coming back for me. Now I owe you one." Yeah. So I mean, he does thank him.
So it is sort of there, yeah.
Yeah, and then at the end of the movie, I guess the final completion is he says, "I love you" to Leia, and she goes, "I know." I love that. So yeah, I don't have much else. I know we could probably talk a lot more about this, but I think we nailed a lot of really good points, and I thought it was a really good discussion. So do you guys have anything else you want to toss out there before we hop on out of here?
I just got very sad because you brought up the Luke, I owe you one, which is such a great moment. And all I'm thinking is, Luke, I owe you one. Go kill my son in 30 years.
Oh, how? We just had a wonderful discussion, and Ben Solo has to
I
creep
told
his
you
ass into this thing.
I told you I was sad because that's where the story goes. So all of this conversation from Solo to the original trilogy is perfection, straight perfection. And then we get to what happened with Luke, and I go, no me gusta. So I just like to leave it at Return of the Jedi is basically what I'm saying.
Yeah. All right. James, anything else?
No, but now I'm thinking about some of that stuff. The only thing out of this whole conversation is I feel like we might also be due for a Leia original trilogy sort of think piece on like where she was at in a lot of her decisions and stuff. That could be kind of cool.
Yeah,
Right.
and we can definitely dive into Han beyond original trilogy and all that stuff. That's a whole nother discussion to have, and that includes Leia heavily. So yeah, there's a lot to talk about, and we're gonna need to have these types of retrospective evergreen conversations if any of these upcoming Star Wars projects end up getting delayed. So we hope you enjoyed this discussion on Han Solo and Luke and Leia being the ones that helped him rediscover his true self. So let us know what you think in the comments. You can obviously email us if you prefer to keep it private, or comment on the video. But just share this if you like the discussion. Let your friends know who like Star Wars and like these characters specifically about the pod. We appreciate that very much. And of course, tomorrow if we hopefully get more Solo, just talking about this in depth about young Han and what else they can show us with Alden Ehrenreich, who did a great job playing Han as well in his own right. Tomorrow, Make Solo 2 Happen Day. Hop on your social media apps, whatever, Twitter, Facebook, MySpace, Instagram, all of them, and just use hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen all day, and let's have a good time celebrating Solo, Han, and the hope that we see more Han and Chewie adventures in live action. And that pretty much takes us to the end of the show. So make sure you're subscribed, all that good stuff. And as far as we go, you can find me tomorrow tweeting hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen at Johnny Hoey. And I have a movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. We're putting out, or we probably just put out an episode on Iron Man, the first Iron Man. Another great character arc, Iron Man. Who goes? James.
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram, both at Myra Trunks.
Lacey.
People can find me on Instagram and Twitter at Lacey Gilleran, on TikTok at It's Lacey Gilleran, and talking about Solo tomorrow for hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen Day.
Yeah, let's have a fun day. If you love Solo, definitely participate. Tell your friends if they love Solo. Get on social media. Find out what their passwords were. Log in and use hashtag Make Solo 2 Happen. And let's have a great day. But we hope you enjoyed this episode. And we'll be back with you Thursday live for another TRB Live right here on the Resistance broadcast. We'll see you around, kids.